when Jake got sick, I was just kind of like, okay, that was the thing in my life, right? Like that was this pivotal piece. And now because that happened, I am protected, which doesn't make any sense, but it's sort of how I coped. Then when he died, I was like, I've had two horrible things happen to me. There's no protection. I would be crazy protective of Ethan and still trying to be like a normal mom, but also being this mom that lost a kid. So I'm like, I 100% guarantee you if anything happens to Ethan, I cannot survive this. I've survived Jake getting sick and I've survived burying him. Zero chance of me making it through again. I mean, it was the first time we talked about some of those things in a decade, like in a very long time. It was really special to be able to reminisce about the good things and the bad things and just know that we're on this journey together, really. It was really special for us. And to really take the time that we took to talk about what is arguably the most important thing in our life, or the most impactful thing in our life, was really awesome. Welcome to A Place of Yes, a podcast about how I moved through my darkest hour. And for me, that was in channeling my grief into good. Welcome to the show. But first, it's time for our review of the week. This review is coming from Apple Podcast. I'm looking forward to following this podcast and seeing the lives it will touch. Grief comes in many forms, and there is no roadmap. I think Heather and Brian have done an incredible job at navigating the journey for their family, as well as helping others find their way. Their family is an inspiration through the love, grace, and hope that they share with the community. I love that one because I hope that that's what people think. I think that we are just living our lives, but it's nice that people are finding the work we're doing to be helpful and to be inspirational, and it just feels good. And don't forget to leave a review on whatever platform you're tuning in on. So this episode picks up at the hospital. We learn that Jake has passed. We learn that we are not able to bring him home. And it explores our relationship. It explores what we do with the sadness. We share some of our grief rituals that we started really in those early days and continue 13 years later. We talk a lot about the impact Jake's passing has had on our relationship, the good things, the bad things, but that it ultimately has brought us closer. And finally, we share the story of what we've really done with Jake's passing, what we've done with our grief, and how we started an organization called Jake's Help from Heaven, and how we try to keep Jake really present in our life, both through the work with the organization and just in general. The episode is going to pick back up with us together at the hospital, waiting to hear from the doctors.
They were waiting for us to get there before they pronounced, that Jake had passed.
Well, I knew because, then he said, "Are you Catholic?" And I said, "Yes." And then the priest came.
Yeah.
Which, if you're not Catholic, but when you're Catholic, when the priest comes, it's not.
Yeah.
You're not getting out of that one. It's like I'm standing outside of us and I'm watching that. Like I can still picture it all. I can still feel it all. It's horrible and not expected. I guess that's the part that still pisses me off when people were like, "Oh, but he was sick." Doesn't mean he didn't have a great life. Doesn't mean he didn't deserve more. Doesn't mean he shouldn't still be with us. So that's my take. I mean, do you have anything to add? We don't have to spend a lot of time in this space.
You had called and, I was in Glens Falls and the drive down, so you're just kind of driving and not knowing what's going on, just knowing that, okay, you guys had to go to the hospital and Jake's in an ambulance and then there's no communication, for that 40 minutes. And, I can, as you just now we're talking, I can picture the room. I can picture the room where Jake was on the bed. Yeah. And, we were fortunate to have many good people around us when Jake was alive. And, the fact that, Todd was there, when he passed. But these are just things you don't ever expect. You don't plan to have your child pass.
I always feel like it was in those days after, and I know it wasn't those days after because the days after were horrible, right? Like the next day, we sent Ethan to school. I think we're decent parents. I don't always know that I think that was Parent of the Year move. But the flip side was staying at home wasn't going to be going to be great either. And God bless Mrs. Somoza. I mean, I told you I saw her over the summer on Spring Run, and I mean, she's still top 5 favorite people on earth. It was Ethan's kindergarten teacher, and her brother had passed when she was a teenager. And something about that relationship with Ethan was so special, right? Like she was just the perfect kindergarten teacher for him at that time. Like that was just one of those things. And Rachel Mitchell was the school psychologist. Basically we went up to them and we're like, so Jake died last night. Like, I mean, we had, I don't think any filter of any sort. And we were just as raw as you could get. And Lake Ave was an amazing school. They took care of our boy, I think, when we couldn't, and then we had to call people. So
No, and call the funeral home.
Go to the funeral home and
it's
plan the funeral and
that
arrange.
you don't want to be planning.
No, and then some people want to come right away, and you're like, wait, I don't need to see you now. Like, I mean, so all of those days. So I always say it was in the days after, but it really probably wasn't in the days after. It was in the weeks after, when we talked about what we were going to do and how we were going to fill this void in my life, because my life had become 24/7 Jake care. Like I didn't work anymore. I really was just all Jake all the time. And we talked about starting a foundation, and we talked about some of the kids during that 117-day stay at the hospital who were not as fortunate. It's hard to think of Jake as being fortunate when you know his end, but he had a dad who didn't leave his side. He had a mom who was a pain in everyone's ass. He had a brother who adored him and family who would come see him all the time. Yvette always came. My parents always came. And then there were some of those little kids who, and I remember so vividly being like, it's not that their parents love them any less. They love them the same way you and I love Jake. But they didn't have the means to be able to give up their life and just be at his side. I can't remember the little boy's name now. You could for the, and I remember weird stuff, but I couldn't remember that one.
It's
who
not
I'm talking
Xavier.
about.
Yeah.
Might have been Xavier. And I always think that, to me, Jake's help from heaven is because of him, even more so than because of our Jake. Because our Jake, we had the means of which we could take care of him and do what we needed to do. And yes, we needed all the supports and all of the things, but I could advocate, I could be on the phone, I could do it. You could do it. But not everyone knows even what even the start of the list, let alone what to do. So in those weeks after, we were like, we need to do something.
Yeah. It goes back to the Holiday Inn. How many families or people can, say, okay, I'm in a hospital because of my situation, and then a hotel is going to give you a free hotel room. I mean, I stopped working.
I was going to say that. The bigger piece of that puzzle is how many people can just stop working and still get a paycheck.
And still get a paycheck. I mean, I didn't go in, I didn't work, I didn't do anything, but I still got paid. That's not typical and it's not, reality for many people. And it was incredible that people stepped up to help us that way that you never even thought that you would need. So, what is it that how can we help people? And, that's where when we started talking about Jake's help from heaven, first we want to do it in Jake's name. He's helping people. He's still with us. We also wanted to make sure that we weren't the family that, our people around us, they didn't want to talk about kids. Oh, okay, well, they lost their kids, so we can't mention kids. So when we're together with our friends and our family, we do a cheers, talk about Jake all the time, because you can either, try to hide and go into a corner and not talk about it, or just say, screw it, embrace it that, yes, we lost our son, but we're not going to not talk about him. He's still who we are. I'm going to say Xavier.
I think you're right.
We wanted to, and again,
right?
There were so many kids just at the hospital that, you would get to know, you would talk to them, and sometimes you would meet the families. And you're right, it wasn't that they,
no, because
didn't want to be
talked
there.
To the mom a couple times. She loved her kid in the same exact way I love Jake, but she worked a lot. A job that the boss wasn't giving her time off. They just were in a different position, and she could only get there a couple nights a week. And it seemed so unfair. And I remember just in those days, even though our kid was so sick and probably the sickest, right? Super sick. But I just remember thinking we had each other, we had Ethan, we had support, we had the means in which we could just focus every single piece of our existence into advocating for him. So here we are. We are at Jake's Help from Heaven.
Yeah, as you talk about Jake's Help from Heaven, so, Jake passed away, December 8th, and we started the foundation March 11th.
March 17th. It was St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, damn. Okay, I was close. As you were saying, it didn't take long to figure out, we wanted to do something.
And that
we wanted to keep Jake's name alive, involved, present. Yes.
It leads a shout out to Teresa Skane.
She was awesome.
She was our attorney. We did not know her before. Mm-hmm. We still don't know her overly well. She just was the attorney that made this happen. She knew that we were I was like, I need you to do this now. She's like, well, I have other jobs. But I was like, nope, you really need to do this now. And she did. You hear these horror stories of how it takes months and months and 10 months, a year to get a nonprofit sort of incorporated. And she turned that around. So, I mean, he passed December 8th.
Yeah.
March 17th, we were official.
It moved very quickly.
And you got Christmas,
Yeah.
you got New Year's. I mean,
Yeah,
you got time there that's not always the most productive time. So there we are. It's 2011. Jake's Help from Heaven has started.
So what is Jake's Help from Heaven? So we're an organization that tries to figure out how to help families. I mean, we had our particular challenges with Jake. And, I feel we were very fortunate that, I didn't have to worry about working, fortunate that a hotel would give us rooms, and in the hospital, they gave us like food vouchers. I don't know if you remember, Aubin Pan. I mean, I ate there every single day. And, there was so much support that we had that I recognize is not the reality for many people. And, so we wanted to create something that would help alleviate some of the burden on families. So, we talk about trying to fund something that's medically necessary or medically convenient, because sometimes making life a little easier would have helped us. It's exciting because we say we have a $2,500 cap, for an applicant, for a year. And we've given away over $1 million, over $1.5 million, 1.6 million. I was going to get there. I mean, we've given away $1.6 million. Most of the awards are $2,500. I mean, there's a lot of $2,500s that go into $1.6 million. And, so for me, I'm excited, that we are able to try to help. We're not making things go away. We're just trying to help ease some of the burdens that families have when they have somebody medically fragile.
And I just was going to jump in and say, because you're talking about the 2,500, and, I'm still processing and like putting the things from our December meeting together. And I was following up on an order I did a couple weeks ago that still is yet to be delivered. It was an application for $106.97. So to your point, there's a lot of $100, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yes, some of these things are $2,500, $1,700, like big numbers. Some ways that we help families are $100. It's recognizing that whatever those families need, in whatever big way, small way, whatever way they need, it's jumping in to help them, right?
Yeah.
And I've said this from the beginning, and I don't always know that I get my point across the way it is inside my head. But when we get those applications that are like $100 or less, they hit different than the big equipment. And it doesn't take away anything from the people. We know like Jake needed a lot of equipment, a lot of expensive equipment. He had a stander, he had a certain chair, he had multiple chairs. All of that is very valid, but when a family is struggling and we can help them, I don't know, it just hits different. What Medicaid provides for a 12-year-old who still needs a diaper, this piece of paper is better than what Medicaid provides. So we buy quality stuff. Those things to me sometimes are exactly what Jake's is, right? Like Jake's is taking families where they are and meeting them there and giving them what they need. People will always say to us, well, do you do this or do you cover this? And I'm like, stop asking me those questions, because we do if you make a case for us, we want to help you. Yeah. And that leads us to, the whole title of this podcast, right? A place of yes. Where do we want to come from? We want to come from a place of yes. Obviously you can't just come in and not have a doc, you've got to follow the rules. But if you come in with your doctor's letter or your signatures and you come in, it's not our place to tell you what you should be asking for. And sometimes, at the board meeting, sometimes we do. I do it, you do it, our board members do it. You want to be like, no, that's not really what you want. You want to do this. Yeah. We gotta, we have to trust that they know what they need.
We have supported, people throughout the ages. So, it's, people often think, well, Jake's Help from Heaven is just for kids. And we're not, because like we said, we always thought Jake was going to be with us for a very long time. We think about, well, what would Jake, and I remember Jeff, he'd be like, well, what would Jake be like when he's 35? We're not just for kids. We don't have an age restriction, and our application is not very hard. If you fill out our application and complete it, if you have your doctor's script, who are we to say, oh, nope, the doctor's wrong? Yeah. So we say, if you fill out our application, we want to fund you.
So I have in my head what I think the answer you're going to say to this question is.
Oh, you don't know me.
But I obviously do not. So I can't say what I think you're going to say, but in my head, I think that I know the answer to this. So my question is, going way back to the beginning, like the first year, early on, what is the first delivery that you remember and the one that made you say in your head, we are doing something great here?
Austin.
Oh. No, I did not think Austin. You want to know what I thought you were going to say?
What?
I was going way back. Nicholas, the first iPad and Pro Loco to go.
Okay.
I did that delivery alone with Ethan, but then you and I subsequently went to Helping Hands to visit him. And he was using the Pro Loco to go to like ask for Cheez-Its. Like, I mean, he was participating in Circle Time. So I was thinking, but that's way back. I mean, that was probably 2011 or 12.
Oh, you know me. I can't go that far back.
Well, I didn't know for Nicholas you could, because that also was the first iPad and Pro Loco to go that we ever did.
That we did? Yeah.
And we also got that letter from his mom. I mean, Nicholas must be, well, do the math. I'm not very good at math. But he's old now because he was 5 or 6 back then. They sent that picture. I still have it. I know exactly where it is, of him on Santa's lap.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And his mom was like, his mom was so touched because she's like, I never thought that my son would be able to tell Santa his Christmas list. So let's talk about Jake. Talk about your relationship with Jake and what you remember of it and what you loved of it.
It's a hard one because, when I think about my relationship, I think about trying to protect him. I think about when we're in the hospital and the rounds would come. You're very good at remembering things, and I write it down in my notebook and trying to figure out how to remember all the things to try to keep him safe. And I remember sometimes overnight when they change shifts, somebody would come in and they would see that his arm or something is twitching, and they're like, oh, we need to give him XYZ. And I'm like, no, you're not. You don't know what's going on. I respect everybody here. I know everybody is trying to do the right thing, but I am here and we don't want to do this. I know as you're thinking of your relationship with Jake, I mean, when I think back, it was always just trying to figure out how do I keep him safe within the boundaries of the things that's me. I mean, I was always the one for his feeding tube and, trying, we'd have to do blood work. Oh my goodness. And, I mean, there was the one phlebotomist, at Saratoga Hospital. I can't remember his name.
I mean, Lars. Back in the day,
was it what Lars was there?
So
but I'm thinking,
Lars,
Lars. But I'm thinking about there was this other guy, and I was like, what days do you work?
Yeah,
because he was like Jake was hard to get blood. We talk about his emotions, and you would see him jabbing. I'm like, okay, we're done.
We're done here.
And then we found this one guy. I'm like, okay, we have to do blood work regularly. When do you work?
Yeah.
Because we built a relationship like that. For me, when I think about Jake, what was my role? And it was just, how do I protect him?
What are some memories or activities you can remember enjoying with Jakey?
We'd go to strike zone.
Yeah.
The sound with the balls, like hitting the pins and just the music and the lights. We'd say, oh, okay, we want to go bowling, with Jake. It was something we did as a family. Yeah. We'd go bowling with Jake. But then in the back of our minds, we'd be like, is it a trigger or is he excited? Because we knew something was going on.
Yeah.
We kind of chose to believe that, he enjoyed it.
He watched his brother. He, heard the sounds. He responded. Yeah. And we made it a happy place. And I do think it was a happy place for him. I certainly would not say otherwise.
Dr. Yaman, would say, so he's in a continual state of seizures. So he's always having, some kind of seizure activity. We made it that the bowling is something that he enjoyed doing because there was a reaction, for it.
And going back to, at least for me, and again, memories are what you make them, right? Like, and the more time that goes, are the moments totally accurate or not? I don't know. It's all perspective. It is what it is. But I do know there were 2 times that I would say, 2 periods of time. The first period of time where we really thought things were good was we were still in the hospital, but when Yaman became his attending and put him on clobazam. And all
we had to get it from Canada.
Well, those stories are a different story for a different time, or good stories. But it was not FDA approved, so we had to order it from Canada. For the longest time, I had the Canadian pharmacy in my phone. And since it was not regulated, like 1 month it'd be $89. The next month it'd be $647. Like, I was like, you're killing me. And once it got stopped at the border, remember, and then we were going to Montreal, and I was like, are they going to let Jake cross? Do they think he's a drug dealer? But that time, so he got on clobazam. Yep. Yaman was like, this is not FDA approved, but I think it could make a difference. And we were like speechless because he was still and he was calm. And that was the first drug in months that had worked for him. And that was this period where we went home from the hospital. He was doing better. He was more participatory in his life, and then he built up a tolerance and then he got pneumonia, all these things kind of happen. But then when we took him off, and it's funny because I for so long was so specific about, I can tell you every drug he was on, I don't remember what drug we took him off at the end. With Dr. Teal, I was like, let's take him off this. He was on keto. He was doing pretty well. And I remember those last few months. And again, am I turning this into something bigger? Perhaps. Like there's that picture of him with Xavier on the fire truck, with his brace on, but he's sitting there and he looks like a happy kid on his fire truck. And he was, I believe that. We were out on the back porch. He was pissy and he was crying and we were like giggly because we're like, our kid's pissed off. Yay.
Yes, we pissed him off.
Like he wants to go inside. He's telling us. He would keep his mouth shut when he was like eating, when he didn't want anymore. When he didn't like the food I liked, he liked some of that like egg stuff I would make and he would eat that right away. And then I'd sometimes throw in avocado or something and he'd give me a look. He had those moments of just really, being an active participant in his life.
Yeah.
Like with Ethan, I can look back and I can tell you 100 different times. I can even say today, like when he called and we talked for 17 minutes, like my heart was full and happy, With Jake, it was different. You had to interpret those moments a little bit differently and you had to take his affection a little differently because it was certainly there. Like you would hold him sometimes and, you'll know exactly what I'm meaning, but like, you'd be sitting there with him and then you could feel him relax and you just knew that he knew he was with his parents. He knew he was with his mom or with his dad and he was safe and he was relaxed and he couldn't tell you in words and you didn't share a moment the same way you share them in other ways. But those moments were everything. Or he'd be in his car seat and Ethan would be in the back seat with him and Ethan would like put his head up and he would he'd be happy that Ethan was helping him and you could see that, And I remember when Jake got sick thinking, okay, this is the bad moment in my life, right? Like this is the moment. This is the thing. And because this thing happened, other bad things can happen. I remember thinking that. Then when he died, I was like, what the actual like that happened and then this happened. And that makes me think that more bad things can happen to me. Like, I don't think you think that way. Like, I think you are less all over the place. But I always, when Jake got sick, I was just kind of like, okay, that was the thing in my life, right? Like that was this pivotal piece. And now because that happened, I am protected, which doesn't make any sense, but it's sort of how I coped. Then when he died, I was like, I've had two horrible things happen to me. There's no protection. I would be crazy protective of Ethan and still trying to be a normal mom, but also being this mom that lost a kid. So I'm like, I 100% guarantee you if anything happens to Ethan, I cannot survive this. I've survived Jake getting sick and I've survived burying him. Zero chance of me making it through again. So then you live in this moment, right, of just like, there's no protection. Something could happen to him. Like, but that's life, right? Like there's no fairness to it. There's no, because this happened, this doesn't happen. But I struggled with that and still do to some degree because I just feel like if you get dealt such a shitty hand, you should be a little protected and you're just not. That is not the place of yes. That is not where I choose to spend my energy and time, but it's really hard work for me. Like I can get in that dark space all day, every day if I let myself, it's a real job for me not to.
When things like this happen, I guess, they say that it either goes one of two ways. You either grow closer or you split up. And, for us, I think, we made it a priority to take care of Jake and to surround our family with us and trying to figure out how to make our unit strong. But I guess there are many families that don't end up doing it that way.
I think the majority, I think the statistics out there are not even like half and half. I think the majority of couples who endure the death of a child do not make it. I don't feel like to us it was never a thing. I can't say that what we did differently or what we did right, but
we didn't run.
I guess, and I think we both were in this place where we knew we had a 5-year-old, we had a 5-year-old that this loss was devastating, right? It's the worst loss you can ever, it's the loss that people think about and are scared of, right? Like just normal life. What are you most scared of? You're scared something's going to happen to your kid. And it happened to us. We had Ethan. Like I
Yeah.
just remember like this, there was this little 5-year-old boy who needed his parents. And that is one place where we were both on the same page and where we both held each other accountable. I knew I had to figure out, regardless of how I felt, how to be there for Ethan. And I knew that I had to support Brian to still do things with Ethan. You know, like you said, in the hospital, like, you know, we have 2 kids. We can't just lock in on the one, and vice versa. Like I know Brian's just personality, right, is you just do what you need to do. You get up and you do the work. And to some degree, that is my personality, but him more so. Like he is very, no excuses, get shit done. That to me, like I didn't want to let him down. Like I wasn't going to be this mom that's going to stay in bed and cry all day, because that, if I did that we wouldn't have survived. I think we had to meet each other in the middle, and I think we both brought out the best in each other. Like I softened him up to be more like emotional and there for Ethan, and he made me get up every fucking morning and put my pants on, you know, one leg in front of each other and be a good mom. Like I think we met each other in the middle.
I can't add to that. So.
Can we talk a little bit about your background and how it has influenced not just our relationship, but how you process grief and who you are for the foundation?
You know, so I mean, I'm the youngest of 5. I mean, Heather, no, I mean, my dad's from the South, my mom's from Canada, and growing up in Boston, a person of color, and you know, from my siblings in the 70s and 80s, and me, there was never an excuse. There's no excuses. You got to figure out how to make things work. So if you know life throws you a curveball, figure it out. I mean, my parents taught me that, and being the youngest, you know, of my siblings, it was you got to figure it out. You got to move forward, and I think a lot of that's how where my personality comes from. When you know this happened, it's like, okay, how do we make this into something? While it is so tragic, how can we make it into something that can benefit and better some other people? I'm excited for that, and you know we have a lot of friends and people that we work with that support us, because we are the vehicle to give out the money to local families, but you know it's the community that believes in the work that we do. So our mission is to figure out how to keep chugging forward, keep moving forward, doing the right things. And Heather's job is to try to figure out how do we continue to bring in the sponsorship and support and the money. And
like even outside of Jake's, right? Like be the good, do the good, like all of that is not just about what we do with Jake's Help from Heaven, though. Like, I mean, I think you live your life that way. Like Jake's is a vehicle in which we do a lot of amazing good things, and in which, like you even spoke about earlier, we do it in Jake's name, and then we talk about Jake, and he is a very vibrant presence in our life because of the work we do. But also, it's not just about that, though, right? It's like, what do we tell Ethan? Like, what's our biggest goal for Ethan? Be a good human, right? Like, it's not just about Jake's Help from Heaven. That is certainly a vehicle in which we do good, but we do good. Like, I mean, the work at the hotels, right? Yeah. Like, you're a super hard worker. You lead by example. I just try to, and I think you too, right? Like, we just try to be good people. Just be a good human. Like, if you see someone sad, try to make them happy. Like, it's when I get mad that people are like, oh, you live such a great life. You travel so much. Like, you have no idea what is going on behind this. And same for other people. We have no idea. So, like, don't get mad at the cash register person, like you don't know what's going on. Don't take your baggage out on other people.
It's funny. I always think when I listen to my Sirius XM, my 90s station, one of the songs is, I don't know the name of it, but it talks about if you ever had to walk a mile in their shoes. I mean, so you could talk about, the person that's asking for money, or you can talk about somebody else, but you don't know their story. And so for me, when I think about my work ethic, I recall my dad always saying to me when I was younger, he was like, never let somebody work harder than you. At the end of the day, you should be able to say you were the hardest person working, because people see that, and, that's how I live my life. I bring that to everything I do, sometimes to where Heather wants to kick me, but,
sometimes I do kick it.
And sometimes she asks, yeah. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to just do it. Nobody will ever say, well, you kind of just did it halfway. You can't change it. You can't. What are things? So what can I control? I can control what I do, and I'm from Boston. Do your job. What the things you can control, you do, and you got to trust the people who are supposed to do their job, that they're doing their part. I would say trust that the person that you're in this with, if you're in this with a person, trust that they're going through it as well, and don't judge that. It's so much healthier to engage with, somebody else about what's going on. Be the support, sometimes just to listen, sometimes to talk to, sometimes to just shut up and close your eyes and hold somebody. But, if there's things going on, pushing people away or trying to isolate yourself, I don't think is the helpful or the healthy strategy.
And I also think that, like, when you are experiencing grief, there's a ton of people out there who will tell you, like, I think what it should look like or how it should feel. And having been in this sort of journey for a long time now, like, there is no right or wrong. Sometimes you are doing great for a really long stretch of time and you're then you almost feel guilty. So then you go down a rabbit hole, but all of it is okay. Like, maybe it's because I just turned 50, or maybe it's because I've been in it so long, but there's no right or wrong way to grieve. There's no, however you are grieving, feel it. Like, it's okay. Like, to Brian's point, like, don't run from the emotions. Like, it's different all the time, and it's different many years later.
Right. So it's interesting. And I think that's our personalities. How you do it is different than how but it works for us because, we're grieving in our different ways, because I'm like, okay, I should do this. You're like, I just want to maybe sit in it,
Well, it's sort of funny when you're like, don't sit alone. And I'm like, no, I really like to be alone sometimes. And I really don't want to. Like, I need to sometimes sit in my headspace and be angry that I don't have a 17-year-old son right now. That when Ethan went to college, I was all alone. Like, and yes, I had to find my vehicles to work through that. But that was on me to work through. That was not on, I didn't want to talk to people about it. Like, and I have good friends and I've got a great husband and I know who to tap into when I need to, but I also do think it's okay to just stew in it sometimes, and
so maybe it's like, don't try to force on it. Yeah. I mean,
and don't have to, like, everything's not okay sometimes. Like, so let's not pretend like it's okay. Sometimes that's grief, right? Like, some days are great and some days are not. And it doesn't matter if the loss was 2 months ago or 20 years ago. I think that it's ebbs and flows. I would say, and this is personal, and I sort of hinted at this earlier, but in our particular scenario where we were with a child who was sick, the people who said, well, you must have known it was going to happen. Oh, he's in a better place now. Like, that stuff made me crazy. Like, I might say something to Brian personally in our conversation, but if someone's mom's dying and they're 95, I'm not going to say, oh, well, she's 95. She lived a great life. I'm going to be like, that must really suck to lose your mom. I think people try to justify, and they think that's going to make it feel better. Like, I don't think people come from a bad place. I think people come from a great place. And I'm sure I stick my foot in my mouth all the time. So I'm not even saying that in a way, but I feel like when I would just get so protective of Jake and, no, he's not better off dead. He was better off with me. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like that made me nuts when people would try to. What about you?
When my mom passed, she passed in 21. It's hard because, my mom was everything when I was growing up. I could say I feel that her body was tired. I think it's so individual and you don't know what to say to the person. So it's kind of, you can just say it sucks. I mean, is there anything I can do? Is there, what, and sometimes it's just leave me alone. And, one of the things I do remember, when Jake passed with like people, we didn't cook for maybe months.
Meal train.
But that was actually nice in the heat of it. I mean,
Brianna set that up.
Well, sometimes it was like, oh my gosh, there's more stuff coming, but it took something away that we needed to eat. But trying to get the strength to go do something or think about something or go shopping was just so much.
It was great too, because sometimes you hear those stories of people who do that for like the week after. And, in those early days, weeks, we had so much food just because there was just so much food, like, I feel like. But then when I think of it being the most valuable was like a month in, right? Like, when all of a sudden our new normal, it almost, once you're past the death and then past the funeral and past the burial and past all the people that are in your house. Like once it's just acclimating to this new life, those were when I was like, we can't grocery shop. Like I don't know what we did, but everything was hard. Like it was just hard. It took a while to just get back to normal. And I remember those meals were pivotal. And I also remember Kristen Morrow, who ended up moving to California. But I remember she would show up sometimes. And it wasn't even like we were best of friends. But I remember she would show up with 2 coffees and she'd be like, we're just going to go for a walk. And I'd be like, okay. Because I didn't even, I was like, okay. Those were the things I look back on that were just so helpful.
Something we didn't talk about.
What?
The funeral home.
Oh, they were so great.
I mean, the funeral home went, I don't want to say, they went out of their way recognizing we lost our son. And
they were so amazing.
They left the door unlocked.
We'd go over like 2 a.m.
Yeah, we could. They would just let us like come in. We could sit with Jake.
We'd bring blankets and just sleep on the floor. They were so good because the funeral home was like kitty corner to our house.
I mean, I think that was also very helpful.
The funeral director there subsequently opened his own funeral home, but he also did side work as a painter. We were so like grateful for him, and he just was such a like this horrible time, right? He was the perfect funeral director because he just guided us. I remember he was kind of like, you should hold it on, like, because I was like, okay, we just have to bury him tomorrow. And he was like, no, you're going to regret that. So let's do, like, he just was so gentle and so great that we ended up having him like paint our house and paint our indoor. Like, I just wanted him around me.
He made that incredibly horrible time,
less,
as okay as anybody could.
Your purpose is to provide family, like to let their loved one, treat them with respect as they, however you believe, whether you believe they're going to heaven or transitioning to another life, or if their soul, like whatever your thoughts are, their job is to take that and do it with respect and to guide the people still alive as well into this transition. And I just think if you do that job well, it is remarkable.
So wait, this is the segment where I get to ask Heather anything.
Yes, we do this segment called Ask Heather Anything.
We are coming up on our 20th anniversary this year. I can't even say yes.
No, this year.
This year. And some people know that I used to be a principal in Boston, and Heather was a teacher in Boston.
Different schools.
Always got to make sure we say different schools. And we
Not
met.
the boss of me.
I was never been the boss of. But we met at a state workshop. I was trying to see if Heather wanted to go out to lunch. It was like the first day that we ever talked.
He thought I was cute.
Yeah, well, she thought I was cute, so I wanted to go out to lunch, and she avoided it.
I did not avoid it. I was starving.
Obviously, fast forward, you know where we ended up. Looking back now, should you have gone out to lunch with me?
No.
Still no?
Why would I changed the trajectory of where we ended up? I believe like it's like sliding doors, right? Like if I had gone to lunch with you, I might have found out that you like chewed with your mouth open or something and been like, I'm never seeing that guy again. No, absolutely would not have changed our trajectory at all.
I'm still hurt by that you want to go to lunch.
You were not like go to lunch. You were like chit-chatty and you were done for the day. I had to come back to the afternoon. Yeah. In my defense, I had 25 minutes. I needed to get a sandwich and I wanted a sandwich. Okay. I like my food. I do not get between me and a meal.
All right. Well, I know the answer now. Definitive.
I just, me, I'm a little witchy. Like I would not change the course of our life.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian, for joining me on A Place of Yes.
I am very happy I did this with you. It was kind of interesting to do a very formal sit down with your wife.
A conversation.
Hopefully I did okay.
I think you did great. So that was a very personal conversation that Brian and I had. And honestly, we haven't had that in a really long time. So it was really special for us. And I'm really glad that we had it. I will say, after we finished recording that, we went over and we had to have some wine because it was a lot. We talked about a lot of different things and really brought up some memories that had been buried for a while. So it was quite a conversation. Next week, we are going to be talking with Crystal, Austin's mom. Crystal is someone that I have known for quite some time through the work with Jake's Help from Heaven. And we're going to talk a lot about a particular delivery and a particular item that Jake's Help from Heaven gifted Austin. One of the things that is really special to me about this delivery is it was an item that I wish I knew about and I wish that I had been able to give to Jake. It was a life-changing delivery for both Austin and for his mom, and I look forward to you hearing about it next week.